Navajo Nation, the largest reservation in the United States. It is home to 180,000 people and spreads across Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. However, very few people actually know of its existence. Today we'll be talking with Dr. Demangan, who is a family practitioner out of Page, Arizona. We'll hear about his work with the Navajo, and he will provide insight into their lives and healthcare.
My experience with the Navajo people really goes back over a quarter of a century. It was back in 1989. I was a medical student, and I took a train out from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to Flagstaff, Arizona, and I embarked on an adventure that changed my life. So I'm a family doctor, and I've been in Page now for almost 25 years. We're right on the edge of the Navajo Reservation, and the patients that come to see me, they have the choice of free health care within the Indian Health Service that works across the whole reservation, or they have the option of, if they have private insurance, of coming to see me. So I have a mix of patients. I can see patients anywhere that might be on Medicaid, and some on Medicare, and some with private insurance. The Navajo Reservation is a very large piece of land. It's the size of the state of West Virginia. So these Navajo patients, they live out in very remote areas, sometimes without water, sometimes without electricity, and very remote locations. So they might have to travel 90 miles to come and see me. And it's amazing sometimes. If you don't ask your patients, you don't know, and all of a sudden you realize they came 90 miles just to see me today for their health care. Now, there have been times where I've had to go visit patients during the years to follow up with them. Maybe they were very remote and they couldn't get in, and I've driven out to some of their homes, and it's amazing. You will leave a paved highway and you'll be on a sandy stretch of road for 20 miles, and sometimes you will be driving over sandstone or rocks, or maybe through a dry riverbed. I've done that before to get to a patient's home. So what are some unique things that might differentiate, say, a Navajo patient from just someone like in your neck of the woods, maybe back east, or in California? We're used to so many of the conveniences of life. I spoke with a patient the other day. She's probably in her late 60s. When she was a little girl, this still blows my mind. It almost I got anxious listening to her story. She said she walked 15 miles to school, one way. And I thought, I was trying to think, is that even possible? And when she showed me where she walked from and to, clearly that was the truth. One of the things you'll find is there's a mix of allopathic Western medicine and traditional Navajo medicine. They have had hundreds of years of medicine men in their own medicine healing ways, and they use a lot of herbs and a lot of local plants that grow across the reservation. And these medicine men will go out and collect all these different herbs for various treatment regimens. For example, I was recently visiting a patient who suffers from dementia, and she was having a lot of behavioral problems, like she was staying awake for 36 hours at a time. And that's hard to live with if someone like that's in your home. And then she'd be asleep for 48 hours or 36 hours or something like that at a time. There was a lot of struggle. Finally, one of the daughters remembered that she still had some of the herbs from the medicine man from a previous treatment. What was in that? Gotta bottle that up.
All kinds of medicine that the medicine man makes when they're doing the ceremony.
Because she was having like 36 hours, 48 hours sleeping, and she'd be awake. And now what's she doing? Is she kind of more on a normal cycle?
Yeah, she's been normal.
Now the patient's sleeping more on a regular basis of nighttime and daytime wakefulness, of nighttime sleep, just like all of us would expect. And that was something that modern medicine wasn't working for this patient. The tea that the medicine man provided, for whatever reason and whatever is in it, it set her back into a much healthier way. It's interesting. I've even gotten to learn some of the language over the years. Isaiah, Hosteen Isaiah. Dr. Demagon from Page, Arizona. And it has helped me take care of the patients over the years because I can communicate at a very primitive level with my use of the language, but it also means that a lot of times you have to have an interpreter, and that's usually going to be a family member or someone at the hospital or your clinic that's Navajo that speaks the language. And that has sometimes been a challenge to figure out what's wrong with a patient when they're speaking a total different language. And you're relying on a family member to interpret for the patient their disease process. Again, one of the things that's inspired me about working with the Navajo people is their large families and how they really do take care of each other. And even as people get old and frail, there's usually a family member that's identified to kind of take over those responsibilities of taking care of grandma and grandpa. And they stay in the homes and don't really utilize the nursing home facilities that often. And I think it's very nice because it keeps people together and enjoying life and being part of life and not being relegated maybe to a nursing home where they can't see their family members as often. And I really appreciate that. So how would some of the injustices and environment that the Navajo people live in affect their health? For example, it was 150 years ago that they were forced to live on reservations. As little as 30 years ago, many were forced off their land to live elsewhere. What's the result of that? Not a lot of employment on the reservation. You might have over 50% unemployment. What's the result of that? A lot of guys that aren't necessarily working. I think you can see alcoholism, you can see obesity, increased amounts of diabetes. We have a power plant on the western part of the reservation just outside of Page, and that's one of the biggest providers of employment for the Navajo people. But it's one of the few I can think of across the whole Navajo reservation, and that's even at risk. They think they're closing that down in 2 years from now, in 2019. This lack of jobs has a direct impact on higher rates of unemployment and leads to more poverty. Makes it very difficult for people to stay at home, to stay on the reservation and make a living to support their families. So if I had to think of one thing to improve the health care for the Navajo people, it would be back to the basics. Most of what I see is directly related to a more sedentary lifestyle, which leads to obesity and other weight-related issues. So I would say back to the basics. Get everybody exercising regularly and eating more of a healthy diet in moderation. What have I learned by working with the Navajo people? Well, I would say again that people are people. They're the same, no matter where you meet them. But they're influenced by what they've been through in their lifetime and previous generations. So it does have an impact on each different types of people that you run across. And with the Navajo, I would say I've been inspired by their strength, their confidence, their smarts, their ability to have overcome a lot of adversity and still, in my opinion, thrive despite all the adversity they've been through. It's really been a joy for me to work with the Navajo people over the years. I mean, for me to go into a room and have a grandmother or grandfather come in, all in their regalia, and know that these people are living in a hogan with a central, potbelly stove for heat. To me, it's inspirational to see these people come in to visit me and ask me for my help with their care. And then I also get to try to communicate with them in their language, which for me has always been an enjoyable part of the experience. If I had any wishes for them for the future of what they could improve on, it's like any of us. Get back to the basics, make sure we're taking care of our bodies, we're eating healthy diets in moderation, keeping our weights at a good level, to avoid the obesity and all the complications that can come from that. Get higher levels of education, push that in our family, because with those higher levels of education are going to come better jobs to support our families. And most likely, a direct result of that is going to be better health.